Now we will be discussing about the concept of corporate accountability, where we will focus on the firm as a political actor. Before we discuss the concept of corporate accountability, we have to understand what we mean by corporate accountability, and in this context we have already visited the concept of stakeholder theory of the firm, where we saw like the firm is embedded in a network of relationship with different individuals or groups of individuals or bodies which have a stake in the functioning of the organization, and the organization has a mutual two-way relationship with the different stakeholders, and the stakeholders of the stakeholders, and the stakeholders are also mutually connected to each other, leading to the fact that they in particular, singular or together, affect the business, or they get affected by the way that the corporation does its business. So, if that is the backdrop, then obviously the question comes to to whom the organization is accountable, and of course should the organization be accountable, and what we are accountable for. So, when we are talking of the concept of corporate accountability, first let us understand what we mean by it. Corporate accountability refers to whether the organization is responsible, is answerable in some way for the consequences of its action. I repeat, it means whether a corporation is answerable in some way for the consequences of its action. In this, we have to understand two things: for what we are answerable, and we are answerable to whom. According to Friedman, if you remember, this viewpoint was, yes, the corporations are answerable, accountable only for the shareholders' money and how they are getting used and what returns they are giving, and so the accountability of the firm lies to the shareholders. But with the extended concept of stakeholder theory of the firm, we understand like it is the organization is accountable not only to the shareholder per se, but they are accountable for all, accountable to all the stakeholders. Then next question comes, like for what they are accountable. If they are not doing its business properly, are they accountable for it only, or they are accountable for certain social consequences also to the society at large or to the stakeholders at large? According to Friedman, they are responsible only for its business purposes and objectives, and taking care of social causes is not within the ambit of the organization, because they have not been trained for it, and it is the responsibility of the government or the political parties to take care of these issues. But with the changing nature of the relationship, where we have looked into the corporate social responsibility and we have discussed the stakeholder theory of the firm, there we find like the civil society means the society at large, the civil society organizations, these have an important say also in how the business is done and how it affects the life or the of the society at large, and also the environment and the civil society at large. So, because the organization is affecting the life of this society, and the society also makes important contribution to the organization in terms of allowing you it to do the business over there. So, obviously, it develops a part of accountability of the organization to take care of the, and it makes it answerable also to the society at large, and it moves the organization towards playing some of the roles which originally government or the political actors were supposed to take up as defined by Friedman. So, with the changing nature of expectations, with the changing nature of the mutuality of relationships, with this role of corporates as political actors also have emerged, because they are expected to deal with many of the social problems of the society in which they have got embedded as a part of doing their business. So, when the corporate takes up this political role, as it functions as a political actor, it may be due to various reasons. Let us now visit the reasons which makes the corporate take up the role of a political actor. The first of these reasons are, of course, government failure. So, why? We have to understand why government fails. In many cases, it so happens expectations are many, problems are many, and there are complexities of the problems are there, and the government may not find it like they are may find it rather that they are not well equipped enough to answer to the needs or the increasing demands coming up on the from the society, or to tackle the increasing problems happening in the society, because there could be a resource crunch in terms of number of things to be addressed together, in terms of money, in terms of infrastructure and other things. So, and in many cases some issues may be sensitive enough, and government may not like to disturb the scenario by giving a political color to it, because it may again send ripples through the society, in some region getting some benefits, some region not getting some benefits, problems of some group is addressed, problems of other groups are not addressed. So because they sometimes are concerned about their own ballot boxes, maybe some inertia may be there on the part of the government to take up certain measures, or majorly maybe they are lacking in the resources in terms of money or manpower or infrastructure to answer to the complexity of the problems which are there. In this juncture, many of the things which were supposed to be like public responsibilities of the government have been privatized, and corporates have been allowed to enter into that area to do the business, so that the services can be provided to all for the greater interest of the citizens at large. So this, in some cases, privatization of the public services have been done. One such thing is like the telecom services, where you find like many private players have entered, and that has made telephone services accessible to every corner of the country. So in this way, for the greater interest of the society at large, for upgradation of the society at large, where the government may feel like it does not have the strength per se to take care of all these issues single-handedly, in those cases, corporates, through their expectations from the society, they are expected to take up the role which the government is supposed to do and extend its presence in those areas. So one reason of the corporates acting as political actors is where the government has certain limitations of providing the services which it is supposed to provide. Second is the increasing influence and power of the corporations. However, it follows from point one only. Like if the government feels like it is not well equipped to provide for the necessary services required for maintaining the well-being of its citizens, and to maintain that level, a hand-holding support or a partnership is required from the corporates, and invites the corporates to take up a role which the government or the political actors who are responsible for defining the regulations, setting up the laws, was responsible. So this gives, the increases the power and influence of the corporate in the mind of the society. So, and what is expected also from these corporates is, in terms of accountability, is because there are no government has not been able in some cases to frame the regulations, self-regulation, ethical codes of conduct in how they do their business is expected from the corporates who enter into playing the role of political leaders or political actors for the organization, for the society at large. So, what we see, like increasing power and influence of the corporations. So, two reasons we find: first is the government failure, and second is increasing of power and influence of corporations. This increased power and influence of the corporation is gained, it follows from point 1, where they gain power because and more influence because they have been invited in a role which the government was supposed to play, and the expectations, the accountability expectations are that of self-regulation on the part of the corporates, because if there are no regulations can be defined by the political parties, the government and the legislation, then it is expected that the organizations practice self-regulation in terms of ethical codes of conduct, how they do the business, and that the standards and norms that they follow in how they are answering to the needs of the stakeholders, or how they are respecting the rights of the stakeholders, different stakeholders and the society at large. Then it comes to the, when we are discussing accountability, and we understand like the corporates have gained power and influence by contributing into the major of the social activities or taking care of the social problems which the government or the political actors are generally supposed to do, and that's how they have emerged as powers or increase their web of influence. So, next question comes is, which is the problem we define, is that of democratic accountability. It comes to the question, who controls the corporates? Because they have gained immense power, because they have gained immense influence, because we have the government only or the people in general only to upgrade its living standard has invited these people to take care of the social issues beyond their major objective of doing the business well, for which it is set. So, it is some extended role that it is supposed the society is expecting the corporations to play. So, that has given them power and spread major influence on the society at large and the government also. So, if that is the situation, the next question comes, when we have made the organization so much powerful and influential, then who controls the corporation, whom they are accountable to? So, when you are talking of who controls the corporation, so it is of course the stakeholders, and generally what we tell, it is the consumers who control the organization, It is the consumers who control the organization by virtue of their selection or deselection of a certain organization whom they will buy from or not buy from. So this purchase power acts as a ballot for them in selecting or deselecting a particular organization. But as we will discuss in the subsequent discussions about the consumers and business ethics, maybe we'll try to focus on these issues, like this purchase power also is not very strong enough control to control the activities of the organization if it wants to do something in a wrong way or unethical way, because in many cases it may not be an open market. The consumers may or may not be rational thinkers who rationally decide and make purchases. There could be unevenness in the marketplace, the choices and what the buyers know about the details of the products and services, and so different factors may affect whether they can utilize their purchase power properly to have a control on whether to make the corporation accountable to them or not. So we have to understand the control lies not only with the consumer, but the control lies with all the stakeholders, and they have to exercise that control properly to make the corporate not misuse the power and influence that has been given to them, or that they have derived from the mutual expectations and relationships from the society and the different stakeholders at large. So if the stakeholders and their expectations from the corporations to play certain role, do certain activities in the social area which is beyond the activity for which the corporation has got formed, have given rise to some derived power and influence in the corporate, the stakeholders should be careful enough to exercise the controlling mechanism which is there in their hand to see like the corporate is not misusing this derived power and functioning in an unethical way, which is helping to the business only to flourish in its own selfish mode, and it is not giving any development or sustainable development to the society at large. And however, if we are comparing the power to exercise this control, we can understand to some extent there could be the power if all the stakeholders are coming together, maybe the power of control increases. But if we are discussing on the power of each of the stakeholders to control the activities of the corporation individually, then maybe the power is less, the strength is less as compared to the strength of the corporation. So, when we understand this, like the power of each of the stakeholder who have not combined their strength together to put it, the corporation, under a net of control or vigilance, then it may so happen, if you are comparing one to one with the individual stakeholders, the individual stakeholders' power of controlling the organization may be less, and there comes the requirement of transparency on the part of the organization, self-regulation on the part of the organization to exercise certain control and share it with the concerned stakeholder or groups of stakeholders. So, when we are talking of transparency, transparency means it is the degree to which corporate decisions, policies, activities and impacts are acknowledged and made visible to relevant stakeholders. So, there are two important keywords in this definition. If you see, the corporate decisions, policies, activities and impacts are acknowledged, means the corporation acknowledges the fact, yes, the activities, decisions it is taking, the way it is doing its business is definitely going to have an impact on the society at large or the stakeholders, concerned stakeholders, even if they realize or don't realize, because I am doing the business in certain way, I means the corporate here definitely knows what is the degree of harm it is like transferring to the stakeholder, even if the stakeholder realizes it, not realizes it, and what is the degree of maybe the benefit I am transferring to the stakeholder, and what is the net benefit, means benefit minus harm, that I am transferring to the stakeholder. So, and with comparison with what I take from the stakeholder also. So, even if the stakeholder realizes it, not realizes it, so but the corporate realizes it very well. And transparency requires, like, first you acknowledge this fact and then you share this idea, you make it visible to the your stakeholders, like this is what I am doing and this is the resultant effect of it, and this is what you are getting and not getting out of it. So, how do you make it visible to your different stakeholders is through the process. How do you make it visible to your different stakeholders is through the different ways that you take. Either you go on for taking audits of your different performances with respect to your different stakeholders. You account for each of the activities that you are doing and you audit for it, and you make the reports public, visible to all. That is one way, like you take, audit it, account for it and make it visible to all the stakeholders, so that they can understand how you are doing your business and what your business is leading to. Second is you can increase the stakeholder involvement in the way that you do your business by increasing the communication with the stakeholders, increasing the stakeholder dialogues, involving them in some of your activities, and constantly communicating to them through different whichever media you may choose, like, so that they are well aware of what you are doing, how you are doing, and they get involved also as a part of your the whole process, and you incorporate their suggestions in the different stages of how you are doing your business, or how your processes are moving, and how the ultimate output or deliverables are reached. So that will increase the level of transparency, and that will help to answer the stakeholder concerns, and that will also help the stakeholders to have a control and check on what the corporate is doing and how it is doing. So that will establish or strengthen the mutual relationship between the different stakeholders and the firm. With these increasing responsibility and increasing expectations, accountability of the organization to the society and the causes of the society, next we will discuss corporates as a citizen. When we started discussing corporate social responsibility, and we started defining corporate, we started with defining corporate in the way these corporates are, in the eyes of law, corporates are artificial entities which are independent of the existence of its shareholders, customers, employees, and other people connected with the business. So it has a separate entity, and which is born to carry out certain functions and objectives defined for its purposes. And if it is a profit making organization, corporation, so it is to make profits for the business activities that it is into. So in the process of discussing corporate social responsibility for the profit making organization, so we discussed, like, it is not only important that the organization answers the financial role properly by answering to the demands of the shareholders only, but it has to get returns for the money, but it has a moral and social responsibility also, not only to the shareholder but also to the different stakeholders at large. And when you're talking of corporate social responsibility, we discussed about economic, legal, ethical and philanthropic responsibilities, in which ethical and legal are the required part of the responsibilities, and ethical is expected and philanthropic is a desired responsibility. And we discussed also how the corporate, just like an individual, can respond to each of these responsibilities, and what outcome it may have on the greater social impact in terms of social practices, social policies, social impact. So when we are discussing in terms of corporate social performance, in terms of the social policies, social programs and social impact, then we are giving importance to the social responsibilities or the social role of the entity what we are talking of as corporates, and we are involving that entity more and more into the societal system in which it is doing the business. So it is getting more and more embedded into the social system in the society in which it is doing the business, and ultimately the it is starting functioning in some way like the citizen of that area, like country where it is doing the business. Just like the citizen has certain rights and responsibilities to the country of which they have the citizenship. So when we impose or when we try to see the corporates as citizens, then there are certain again responsibilities of the corporates and expectations from the corporates that the society has from the corporates, because they are seen as citizens just like any other citizens, human beings. So if the expectation is that where you are identified as a citizen of a particular country, then what are that rights that you enjoy and what are the duties that you have to perform are discussed in the next part of discussion when we are focusing on corporate citizenship and different layers of it. Thank you.